This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on a church, get on mandate, get it on. I'm talking fast because Mark's got a hard out. And Beyond a Reasonable Doubt in studio, everybody. Commitment to excellence.
It is. And because I can't remember the last time that this may be the best 15 minutes that I've ever spent in my life, because I need your brain on this story. Okay?
I'm intrigued.
And in a pre-Trump era, and in my previous incarnation, for 20 years, I used to do ABC in the morning as a legal analyst, CNN, Fox, back in the days when I would go on Greta's show on Fox, and then CNN, I'd be all over the place. And in that previous life, this story would have been wall-to-wall on cable news. This would have been what I used to call the axis of evil for a defendant, which is, back then it was like People magazine and then the morning shows and cable news primetime. This case was made for a summer cable fest. And do you know which case I'm talking about?
I couldn't at this point, because so far all I know is it's a case.
Right. Okay. So there is a woman who is currently in custody, and Gary may have the picture. There's a picture of her in custody, actually in the jailhouse in Belize. And she's either in Belize.
All right.
She's either married to, or there she is, common law partner of a apparently very wealthy scion of a lord in Parliament in the UK. And they, several months ago, during the pandemic, they invested in Belize a luxury hotel. I mean, do we have a picture of this hotel or the location in Belize, which is spared no expense? Well, the reason she's in that cell is apparently she's now charged and has been denied bail on the murder of one of the top law enforcement police officers in Belize. And she was found, blood all over her, on a pier next to look at that place.
Look at a beautiful resort, an exotic resort.
Look, I mean, it's just gorgeous. I wonder if we can pick that up on a song right now as a distressed property. And maybe out on one of those piers there, they had apparently broken COVID curfew, and she's found blood all over her, and the body of the deceased is in the water.
Wow,
and
she's
one
a
gunshot,
very attractive
there
blonde.
she is, right? Look at this, prim, proper. That could be somebody who hangs out with Paulette in Pasadena, right?
Absolutely.
A Valley Hunt Club, Annandale Country Club, that kind of, right?
Yes.
It's got perfect. Now, Gary, do we have a picture of the deceased?
She's kind of Kathy Lee Gifford when she was,
37. There's the deceased.
Wow.
Okay. Now,
he's a large man of color.
Described by one of his relatives. One of his relatives said this. I didn't say this, okay? So all of you people with your political incorrectness, described by his own relative as grossly overweight, okay? And I'm sure a great law enforcement person. Anyway, he died and was found in the water with a gunshot wound behind his ear. If you believe what's being reported, she apparently told them that she summoned him to her place in that luxurious resort. He came over, and she summoned him so they could talk about her personal security. They had some alcohol. They apparently decided to go to another place that had alcohol, but that place was closed because of COVID. And then somehow he had a shoulder injury, and she decided to start massaging him. And then somehow his gun was on the pier. She picked up the gun, and somehow it went off. And somehow he ended up in the water, and she ended up covered in blood.
Now, she is the heir to or the daughter of who?
Gary, do you want to weigh in?
Let me get the exact name, but she is basically her partner. It's unclear whether or not they're married, but her partner comes from a very, very, very wealthy British family.
And where was the partner? Do we know?
He was with their kids back at the hotel that they own. That hotel that we showed, she and her partner are somehow involved in the ownership of it. And he was with her in Belize, and apparently was back at the hotel with 2 kids.
But she went to another room.
She went to a pier that was outside of that hotel. It's not in that photo. It's the neighboring property that you can sort of see the edges of, but you can't see the pier itself in that photo.
And did she have a relationship with the law enforcement guy before
Supposedly, they knew each other.
He had stayed at their properties numerous times, rent-free. He apparently told a friend that he was going on a date, despite the fact that he was meeting up with a woman. Despite the fact that he had his lady and his 5 kids with her. She was also found to have had
He may have 5 kids, and he may also have a bun in the oven. Seeing that picture of him, I don't know how it works in Belize. I'm not a physician, but he definitely may be cramping out some twins.
It's not impossible. She apparently also was found to have had a small amount of cocaine on her, though she hasn't been charged for that. She wasn't charged with murder.
I think hot chicks are like dollar bills, though. They say if you check every dollar bill, there's a little
bit of cocaine.
Hot blondes, if you check the blood on any hot blonde, you find a little bit of cocaine in there. Some of that could just be from the 90s. So let's not rush to judgment there. I'd be a good expert. I'd be a good expert witness for you, right?
Where did you have you used that line before?
No.
How did you just come up with hot blondes are like cocaine on dollar bills? How is that even possible? How does your brain
things, Mark? I put things together.
I knew this story needed to be run through your brain.
So
it's kind of like you don't want to watch how sausage is made. You put these stories into your brain, and out comes this. So keep asking questions.
All right. So she knows that law enforcement. Now, the law enforcement guy looks like a guy who used to wrestle professionally and to kind of let himself go a little bit.
He looks like somebody. If I were to tell you without the uniform that he played, there you go. That's his sister, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
His sister, who's been quoted extensively.
Yeah, he's kind of Idi Amin meets Idi Amin. That's how I would describe him. If you're trying to picture him with a dusting of Idi Amin.
You don't need to picture him if you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast. You'll be able to see all the images Mark and Adam are seeing.
So what would be her motivation to kill him?
I cannot think of any motivation to kill him. One of the relatives is already, if you believe what's being reported, characterizing it as an assassination. I can't figure that out. There's been rumors. I mean, everything is flying. You cannot believe. And my prediction is this, absent some other major calamity in the world, this is going to be a story that does gain pre-Trump summer scandal traction. Speculation has been they were having an affair. Speculation has been maybe he was delivering contraband to her, cocaine. Mm-hmm. Speculation has been that he was extorting or blackmailing her. Speculation has been that he was distraught because he had trouble with his either the mother of his children or wife, and had been staying at the hotel for a couple of days, and it was a suicide. And that's why you see the family members denying that he was suicidal in any way, because who shoots themselves behind the ear? I mean, that's another thing. But,
I guess. I mean, I don't know, how it works with suicide. I mean, certain things seem plausible and certain things don't. It seems to me, if I know law enforcement from Belize, he is providing drugs for her feels plausible to me.
Well, he clearly does not appear. He does not have, and this is based on 40 years of representing people who ingest drugs. He does not have the physique of a drug user.
Does not have that cocaine look.
Right. But
now, staying in the guest house free sort of thing.
Right.
Her with small amounts of cocaine. I don't think cocaine stays in your body very long.
And by the way, Gary, was it in the body or
found
in the
in
purse?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, now and if it's a small amount, like come out here. I remember a case many years ago of a lawyer, female lawyer in Van Nuys, who was busted giving a oral sex to what was characterized in the old Herald Examiner as a gangbanger in a parking lot, and it turned out that this lawyer was addicted to crack. This is back in the old days, and was giving trading favors.
Yeah, it seems the Belize Police Department feels a little haphazard, and it seems like they would have access in their evidence room for drug, and it seems to me like he was supplying her with drugs. I
knew you were going to cut to the chase. Does it seem like suicide? Are we ruling out suicide? You as the guest coroner today?
I don't know. I'd really have to know like where he was shot, because it strikes me that you can shoot yourself right behind the ear. That doesn't
rule it out.
Doesn't rule it out.
Like,
to me.
if you weren't that limber, and maybe that's the only way you could get it, you couldn't get your arm up that high.
There's one more thing that I personally found curious. The cartridge from the spent bullet was still in the gun. Usually that would eject.
Mm-hmm.
Fire a shot. So
I could see where a ballistics expert would say that could have been accidental. That's a good fact for the defense. Yeah, very good, Gary.
Oh,
because if it were to have just fired itself off, the gun may not, if it wasn't a clean fire from a trigger pull, the slide may not have gone all the way back.
Wow. Now that is, the first thing they need to do. They've apparently already got Jeffrey, what's his name, as the lawyer there. Jeffrey, I'm sure, has already retained a ballistics expert. That is a fascinating fact.
Well, all you have to do is prove that the gun malfunctioned, and then whatever the gun did after that, it doesn't really matter.
They're also giving her grief because she invoked her right to counsel, which I always find, who does that is what the wags are saying. But
her attorney, Godfrey Smith, was previously worked on the Supreme Court in Belize. He's like formerly, maybe it was Attorney General. He had a high-ranking legal position in Belize.
Yeah, I do always like that. Well, if you weren't guilty, then why did you get an attorney? It's like, well, because I'm being charged with a crime.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm covered in blood. There's a dead body. I can pretty much put together that they may be looking at me. And how do I explain that I've got two small children, a husband who owns this place, and I'm out here on the pier, and I probably had a nip or two?
Well, I know we're going to keep following that one, and Mark's a little bit up against it. So, Mark, did you want to get to that other story we were going to cover?
Well, the other story is one of the legal legends of his generation, many generations, passed away today as we're recording this, F. Lee Bailey, who
really
a lot of people will know from O.J. F. Lee Bailey, I know because but his career was made on the case Shepard v. Maxwell, which was later turned into The Fugitive.
Oh, really?
And when he
Dr. Shepard.
Yeah, and Shepard v. Maxwell is still, even though it's quaint, the seminal case on media in the courtroom, and I have fights with the now retired AP reporter Linda Deutsch, who was the dean of courtroom journalists about it. But F. Lee, as I was telling somebody today, I used to see every year at the National Trial Lawyers down in Florida, and still sharp as shit. And he's 87 as he died, and mentally sharp as shit. But you could see 2 years ago he was starting to physically break down. And it made me reminisce today because the case that got him disbarred back in 2001, 2002 was a case that I had here in L.A., which was Claude Lebach, and which was somebody who Claude had been extradited from Hong Kong, and Bob Shapiro subbed me out of the case back then here in Los Angeles, and Lee was brought into the case in Florida, and subsequently, I believe Shapiro testified against him, and I could go into the long story as to what the case was, but Lee refused to give over his fees, and he had gotten stock as his retainer. The stock went up astronomically. And
400, 500%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Lee said, okay, they want to do an asset forfeiture. He said, fine, I'll give you the worth of the stock when I got it. And they said, no, we want it all. And he said, no way, I want the delta of what it went up.
Right.
And went into custody for a period of time, maybe 6-7 weeks, and ended up getting disbarred and moved later on to Maine and passed the Maine bar exam, and then the Board of Bar Examiners would not admit him. Died.
That's grounds for dismissal.
Disbarment, yeah.
For saying you got your retainers in the form of stock, and you want to keep the dividends essentially before you.
I want to keep the appreciation, which I thought was a great argument.
The problem also became that it was ruled. You know, they went and fought about it, and he lost, but he had already spent a lot of the profit, so he didn't have the money to give back when it was ruled that he, was not able to keep the proceeds.
Yeah, it didn't sound like grounds for being disbarred.
It's the whole thing, I think, was a tragedy. And by the way, he literally, between Patricia Hearst, O.J., Sam Shepard, you go on and on and on. Oh, the Boston, the famous Boston Strangler.
Really?
Yeah. He had and by the way, he also. I saw some.
Sam Shepard is a military doctor,
correct,
surgeon or doctor who was. He said his family was killed by bikers, and they found him guilty, and then they got out or something. It's a crazy story.
The U.S. Supreme Court reversed it because of the media intervention or intermeddling. But Lee is. People remember him because of O.J., but he was. In his day, probably one of the best cross-examiners you'd ever run across. He just was phenomenal. He was a pilot. He was a Marine. Like I say, sharp until the day he died. And a tragedy that he died penniless and basically broken. But they never broke his spirit.
It's interesting. I just want to do a little tease here because a lot of his story lines up with another prominent attorney who Mark and I are going to cover on the Saturday edition of Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, who, Adam, I bet you know who this is, Tom Girardi, who was the attorney in the Aaron Brockovich story.
Right,
yeah.
And so we'll talk about, we'll tease it for that on Saturday as you go down to my favorite area in the world.
Yeah, I'm doing a corporate gig tonight. Well, rest in peace, F. Lee, and rest in peace, Idi Amin Jr., and we've lost many of the greats. Hug your kids when you get home, people. You never know. It's a short ride. So, until next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garriga saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.